December 2nd, 1967. Skies over Hanoi. A formation of American F-4 Phantoms, the deadliest fighters on the planet. $2.5 million per airframe, state-of-the-art radar. 6 air-to-air missiles strapped to each one. Flying against them, aging Soviet MiG-21S, 1/8 the cost. Primitive radar, 2 missiles. Pilots with a sliver of the flight hours. On paper, this isn't a contest. It's an execution. But the Americans are the ones dying. Vietnamese pilots keep dropping Phantoms with maneuvers the Pentagon cannot decode. Strike from below, vanish into cloud cover, gone before the Americans even roll to pursue. And leading the charge, one man, Nguyen Van Coc, son of a rice farmer, 23 years old. Before 1967 ends, he will destroy 9 American aircraft. That makes him the top-scoring fighter ace of the entire Vietnam War. A pilot in an inferior machine, dismantling the strongest air force ever assembled. What tactics did the Vietnamese develop that American commanders had no answer for? How did the dogfights above Hanoi reshape aerial warfare for the rest of the century? Nguyen Van Coc entered the world in 1944 in Nam Dinh province, 90 kilometers southeast of Hanoi. His father farmed rice, his mother kept chickens. No one in the family had ever stood next to an airplane. Then, in 1963, North Vietnam opened recruitment for its air force. He was 19. He signed up. Not out of patriotism. He just wanted to fly. 500 applicants, 30 slots. He got 1. In 1964, they shipped him to the Soviet Union, a classified training base near Chkalovsky. This is where North Vietnamese pilots learned the MiG-21. The program was punishing. The MiG-21 was quick, nimble, and merciless. Top speed, 2,100 kilometers per hour. Combat radius, 480 kilometers. Once a dogfight started, you had 15 minutes of fuel. After that, you either turned for base or you crashed. Soviet instructors drilled one principle into their heads. You will not survive a drawn-out engagement with American planes. They carry superior radar, superior missiles, and more fuel than you can dream of. So, hit hard. Disappear harder. By late 1965, he was back in North Vietnam. His total time in the air, 120 hours. American pilots rotating into Vietnam logged over 500. That gap meant nothing to him. He had a method, and he was about to test it against the most formidable air force the world had ever fielded. The F-4 Phantom II was a beast. McDonnell Douglas designed it in the late 1950s with a singular purpose: intercept and kill Soviet bombers before they reached American soil. It broke Mach 2. It could punch through 18,000 meters of altitude in under 2 minutes. Price tag: $2.5 million per unit. Adjusted for inflation, roughly $23 million. Its AN/APQ-72 radar system tracked targets at distances up to 45 kilometers. It hauled 6 AIM-7 Sparrow missiles, engineered to acquire enemy aircraft from beyond visual range and obliterate them before the opposing pilot realized he was marked. On paper, this $23 million weapon system could not be beaten. But there was a fatal design choice: no gun. The engineers were convinced that close-range dogfighting was dead. Air combat's future lived at long distances. Missiles handled everything. Knife fight maneuvering belonged to a previous era. They were catastrophically wrong. When F-4 Phantoms deployed to Vietnam in 1965, American brass brimmed with certainty. North Vietnam's entire air force numbered maybe 40 planes, mostly aging MiG-17S, a small handful of newer MiG-21S. The US fielded hundreds of Phantoms, crewed by the finest trained pilots alive. Total air dominance was expected within months. Reality looked different. The war over Vietnam didn't unfold at 45 kilometers. It happened inside clouds, at treetop altitude, in point-blank ambushes where radar went blind and missiles refused to lock. In that kind of fight, the F-4 Phantom wasn't untouchable. It was exposed. Americans labeled the Vietnamese approach hit and run. The Vietnamese had their own name, guerrilla air warfare. The mechanics worked like this. American bombing sorties into North Vietnam followed repeatable routes. Columns of F-105 Thunder Chiefs, heavy, bomb-laden strike aircraft, would push north from bases inside Thailand. F-4 Phantoms would fly escort, holding cover above and behind. The Americans carried one decisive edge: airborne radar. That radar could spot enemy aircraft up to 45 kilometers out. Plenty of time to maneuver, plenty of time to engage. But radar had a blind spot. Low-flying targets, hugging the earth, vanished into ground clutter. Clouds blocked the signal entirely. The North Vietnamese intended to exploit both weaknesses. Ground control made it possible. Across the country, a network of early warning radar stations rose up, built with Soviet advisors guiding every installation. These stations tracked American formations the instant they crossed into North Vietnamese airspace. Every scrap of data funneled to a central command post in Hanoi. Codename Bison. Bison controlled everything. When to scramble the MiGs, what altitude to hold, what angle of approach. MiG pilots didn't make decisions, they obeyed. The tactic worked like this. MiG-21s would launch and immediately drop to low altitude, 500 meters above the ground, sometimes lower. Radars dark, engines quiet, invisible to American sensors. The MiG-21 was small. At low altitude, it registered as ground clutter on American screens. Bison would vector the MiGs into position using ground-based radar. The fighters would tuck behind clouds or nestle behind ridgelines, waiting. Above them, American formations would cruise past, confident their scopes were clean. Then Bison's voice. Climb and attack. The MiGs would rip upward vertically, afterburners shrieking. They'd punch through the clouds directly beneath the American formation. Inside that radar dead zone, the world's most advanced fighter became completely blind. The F-4's fatal gap. At close range, the AIM-7 Sparrow was worthless. It needed time to acquire a lock. A sudden ambush gave no time at all. The MiG-21's K-13 Atoll missile had an effective range of just 3 kilometers, but needed only 2 seconds to lock. Fire, dive back into the clouds, vanish before the Americans could respond. Total engagement window, 60 to 90 seconds. On paper, it was brilliant. But combat isn't paper. Could a farmer's son with 120 hours of flight time pull this off against the best trained pilots on Earth? November 28, 1966, 2:14 p.m. Gia Lam Airfield, Hanoi. Nguyen Van Coc has been a combat pilot for 18 months. 47 sorties flown. He squeezed the trigger in anger exactly 3 times. Never hit a thing. Today he will watch the tactic prove itself for the first time. The alarm cuts through the airfield. American strike package inbound. 12 F-105 Thunder Chiefs with 4 F-4 Phantoms riding escort. Course: north toward the Paul Duma Bridge, a vital supply artery the Americans have been hammering for weeks. He sprints to his MiG-21, but he's not the primary shooter today. His flight leader, Nguyen Van Coc, carries that role. A senior pilot with 3 years in combat. COC is the wingman. His mission? Hold Q's wing, scan for threats, absorb everything. Pre-flight checks run fast. Fuel tanks full. 2 K-13 Atoll missiles loaded on the rails. Cannon, 60 rounds. Radio functioning. He straps in. Engine start. The Tumansky R-11 turbojet screams awake. Ground control. Bison crackles through his headset. 4 aircraft immediate takeoff. Heading 180. Altitude 500 meters. Radar off. He doesn't question it. He never questions it. The ground controllers see the entire battlefield. He sees only what fills his canopy. They launch. Q leads. COC follows 2 seconds behind. They skim low over rice paddies and villages. American radar is sweeping for targets at medium and high altitude. Down here, nothing exists. Bison's voice returns. American formation bearing 045. Distance 40 kilometers. Altitude 6,000 meters. Maintain current heading. He glances at his fuel gauge. 12 minutes, maybe less, before he has to break off. The MiG-21 was never built for endurance. Declassified Soviet technical manuals put the aircraft's internal fuel capacity at roughly 45 minutes under normal conditions. In combat, with afterburner use, that collapsed to 15 minutes or fewer. American pilots knew this. If they could keep a MiG locked in a dogfight beyond 10 minutes, its fuel would bleed dry. Disengage or crash. Those were the only options. But the Vietnamese had no intention of staying that long. Target 20 kilometers. Begin climb. Afterburner. Q shoves the throttle forward first. He follows. The afterburner ignites. The MiG-21 rockets upward at more than 200 meters per second. G-forces crush them into their seats. Peripheral vision collapses. Each breath becomes a battle. 5 seconds pass. They punch through the cloud layer at 5,500 meters. And there, right there, 4 F-4 Phantoms. 800 meters ahead, slightly higher. Loose formation, eyes scanning forward and up, not down, never down. Q's targeting system finds the nearest Phantom. A solid tone fills his headset. The American pilot hasn't spotted them. A 1984 US Air Force study on Vietnam air combat revealed something staggering. In 68% of MiG ambush encounters, American pilots received 0 radar warning before the strike. The MiGs flew too close, too low, too fast for the F-4's radar to register them in time. Q doesn't wait. He squeezes the trigger. The K-13 Etoll missile slides off the rail, ignites, and tears through the air toward the F-4's exhaust trail. The American pilot spots it, far too late. He yanks left, but the missile is already closing. The F-4 detonates. He watches the whole thing unfold, the fireball blooming, wreckage tumbling through open sky. The remaining 3 Phantoms scatter, heads swiveling, hunting for the threat. But Q is already gone, nose down, throttle chopped, rolling inverted, swallowed by the clouds below. He follows, glued to Q's wing. The 3 Phantoms wheel toward the position where the MiGs had been. By the time they search for a lock, nothing. Empty air. Total time above the clouds, 12 seconds. They level off at 500 meters, heading south. Fuel gauge flashing red. 4 minutes remaining. Gia Lam airfield sits 35 kilometers away. They touch down with 90 seconds of fuel left in the tanks. Ground crew already lines the runway. They've been monitoring the radio chatter. 1 confirmed kill. An F-4 Phantom destroyed. Q steps from the cockpit. Composed, measured. This isn't his first. He climbs from his own aircraft. His hands won't stop trembling. His flight suit clings to his body drenched through. Not fear, adrenaline. The raw shock that the tactic actually worked. He never fired a round. He was the wingman, watching, absorbing. But he understood with perfect clarity his turn was coming. That evening, Radio Hanoi broadcasts the shoot-down. No names mentioned, but inside the Pentagon, analysts are scrambling to understand what just happened. Declassified US military records paint a grim picture. Between September and December 1966, American forces lost 43 aircraft over North Vietnam. 8 of those were confirmed MiG kills. The loss rate was climbing and accelerating. North Vietnamese MiG tactics were delivering results. Nguyen Van Coc had just witnessed the blueprint firsthand. The Americans, however, weren't the type to absorb punishment quietly. After watching MiG-21S tear into their formations through November and December of 1966, US military analysts dissected the pattern. The MiGs struck when F-4 Phantoms flew escort duty, distracted, tethered to slower F-105 Thunder Chiefs. But against pure F-4 fighter sweeps carrying no secondary mission, the MiGs vanished, stayed home. Colonel Robin Olds noticed that gap. Olds was a World War II ace, 13 confirmed kills against Luftwaffe fighters. 44 years old, aggressive, furious. He'd been running fighter sweeps over North Vietnam for months, and the MiGs refused to come up and fight him. So he devised a way to force their hand. Operation Bolo. The concept was elegant in its deception. F-4 Phantoms would masquerade as F-105 bombers. Identical flight paths, identical altitudes, same radio frequencies, same electronic signatures. North Vietnamese ground controllers would track what appeared to be a standard bombing run. Slow, vulnerable, ripe for ambush. But when the MiGs rose to strike, they'd find themselves face to face with the finest fighter pilots the US Air Force possessed. January 2nd, 1967, 2:45 p.m. Olds pushes out front, leading 28 F-4 Phantoms toward Hanoi. They cruise at 4,500 meters, the exact altitude F-105 strike packages always flew. They transmit F-105 call signs. They mirror the exact routes bombers always fly. Down below, North Vietnamese radar operators watched the formation approach. Every signal reads the same. Another American bombing run. The response is automatic. Scramble the MiGs. 16 MiG-21S launch from Phuc Yen and Gia Lam airfields. Some of North Vietnam's finest pilots are among them. They climb toward intercept altitude, expecting sluggish, bomb-heavy aircraft guarded by distracted escorts. What they find instead is Robin Olds and 28 F-4s carrying a single objective: kill MiGs. The Vietnamese recognized the trap within seconds. Too late. Olds already owns altitude, speed and position. The MiGs attempt their signature move: climb, fire, dive away. But there's no escape vector. Phantoms fill every corridor of sky. The entire engagement lasts 12 minutes. Olds launches first. His AIM-7 Sparrow missile tracks a MiG-21 and tears it apart at medium range. His wingman scores another, then another. Vietnamese pilots break formation, clawing toward cloud cover, but Americans occupy every gap. 7 MiG-21S destroyed. American losses, 0. Declassified US Air Force after-action reports confirm Operation Bolo eliminated nearly half of North Vietnam's operational MiG-21 fleet in one engagement. It stands as the most successful air-to-air operation across the entire Vietnam War. A devastating strike against the North Vietnamese Air Force, but not a killing blow. Because Nguyen Van Coc wasn't in the air. He was scheduled to fly. His MiG-21 sat fueled, armed, ready on the Gia Lam tarmac. Minutes before takeoff, ground control pulled him, reassigned to a different patrol sector. Some historians call it luck. Others believe Vietnamese controllers sensed something wrong. The American formation was too clean, too precise. Whatever kept him grounded, Coc survived. Operation Bolo forced the North Vietnamese to evolve. They grew cautious. No more large formations chasing obvious targets. They waited, stalked perfect opportunities, moments when American defenses thinned or attention drifted. Same tactic, sharper execution, more selective, more patient. The 921st Fighter Regiment stood down for 3 months, retraining, recovering. The Pentagon declared Operation Bolo a decisive victory, the MiG threat neutralized. But was it finished? Or had the Vietnamese simply learned discipline? And what would happen when they climbed back into the sky? On April 30th, 1967, the Americans would get their answer. April 30th, 1967. 2:14 p.m. Gia Lam Airfield, Hanoi. 3 months since Bolo. The 921st Fighter Regiment is operational again. The alarm screams. American strike package inbound. Nguyen Van Coc sprints to his MiG-21. This time he's not riding wingman. He's number 2 in a 4-ship formation. His own target. His own kill. They launch. Low altitude. Clouds swallowing them. Ground control vectors them into position. Target 20 kilometers. Begin climb. Afterburner. He pulls hard. Punches through cloud cover at 5,500 meters. 4 F-4 Phantoms dead ahead. He locks the second aircraft. Fires. The F-4 detonates. He rolls and dives back into the clouds. Total exposure, 12 seconds. When he touches down, ground crew crowds the tarmac. 2 kills confirmed. Nguyen Van Coc claimed the other. But this time, Coc is the one who pulled the trigger. That evening, Radio Hanoi broadcasts his name, the farmer's son from Nam Dinh, his first kill. Between April and December 1967, Nguyen Van Coc flew 23 additional combat missions. October 3rd, kill number 2, an F-4D. October 7th, kill number 3, an F-105. November 18th, kills 4 and 5, 2 F-105s in a single sortie. Ace status. His face appeared on propaganda posters. Radio broadcasts named him Defender of the Sky. School children memorized his name. The Americans were memorizing it too. Declassified CIA reports reveal that US analysts began tracking individual North Vietnamese pilots. Coc's call sign, Red 3107, surfaced again and again in after-action reports. He became a priority target. American pilots received specific briefings. If you spot a MiG-21 rocketing vertical out of cloud cover, guns blazing at knife fight range, gone before you can react. That's him. Kill him before he kills you. But catching him was a problem. He never lingered in a fight past 60 seconds, never repeated a pattern, never engaged unless a math favored him. December 1967, kills 6 and 7. December 28, 1967, kills 8 and 9. Double ace. 9 confirmed victories. The deadliest fighter pilot of the entire Vietnam War. He was 25 years old. After 1969, Nguyen Van Coc never flew combat again. North Vietnam grounded him, not as punishment, but as preservation. They needed him training the next generation. He outlived the war, retired in 2002 as Chief Inspector of the Vietnamese Air Force. But what he started echoed far beyond Southeast Asia. Operation Bolo and those MiG ambush tactics forced the US Navy to build the Fighter Weapons School in 1969. You know it as Top Gun. Turns out the dogfight wasn't dead after all. A farmer's son in an outdated jet had proved that to the most powerful air force on Earth. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and leave a like.